Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. And as I was going through and seeing what was newsworthy, we all knew that the impeachment was imminent. It's happening. It's on like Donkey Kong. So I decided we would do a watch along. But briefly before that, I want to talk about the ramped up propaganda that you can see behind me in the thumbnail real quick. Now, they are acting as though the Capitol could be sieged at any moment and that the military needs to be there and that somehow they need to sleep on the floor rather than be there in shifts. And notice there's no social distancing going on. It's just the masks that were never proven to work in the first place. We're not talking about N95, etc. No. Just cloth masks on top of one another in the Capitol, sleeping on the floor for a photo op. This is what propaganda looks like. This is complete and total madness. So before we jump in live, thumbs the video up, subscribe, and share. This is going to be a watch along live. It's happening now. The madness continues. The madness continues. The madness continues. And again, without you guys, I wouldn't be able to do this. $5, $10, $15. It means the world to me. The GoFundMe is down below. Normally, I'd say we could use it kind of as a super chat, and I just take questions and comments from there. But it doesn't appear that you're allowed to comment, even though I have them enabled for some odd reason. It's weird. All the documentary films, they're free in the playlist section here. And if you are not on Rockfin, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday, we are live. Make sure to go make that free account. And you can also support me there with a premium account. Everything is now backed up on Odyssey, as many people have requested. Thank you guys for doing that. And again, Fort Capitol. This is just nonsense. And any real military leader will tell you what nonsense this is. This is not how you set up shop. This is all a photo op, man. I'm disturbed. I'm disgusted. I want to puke. I mean, I don't know what to say. This isn't a real thing. This isn't necessary. Everybody knows it's not necessary. But again, they're prepping you for domestic terror everywhere. Watch out, you are the domestic terrorist. And this impeachment fiasco is going to go far. And yeah, I'm showing you this because it's important to show you what this is. It's a bullshit photo op. Think about this. How's this helping anybody? This is dystopia 101 right now, guys. I just want everybody to understand what we're looking at. Look at all these pictures. This is nuts. Nuts. Absolute madness. Okay? Absolute madness. It's all we gotta board everything up. We gotta board everything up. I mean, it's just not even reasonable. Now, before we go live, I want to play Getz because he's trending, and you judge for yourself what he says here.
Brags that she called for people to get in the faces of those who serve and support the president. I denounced political violence from all ends of the spectrum, but make no mistake, the left in America has incited far more political violence than the right. For months, our cities burned, police stations burned, our businesses were shattered, and they said nothing. Or they cheerled for it, and they fundraised for it, and they allowed it to happen in the greatest country in the world. Now, some have cited the metaphor that the president lit the flame. Well, they lit actual flames, actual fires, and we put them out.
Expired. There will be order in the House.
I yield back.
I don't know if I'd even be able to handle it like that. Only I wouldn't make it about left and right. So here we go. We're going to do it live. Let's put it on.
Want America to believe that the president incited a spontaneous riot that they'd like to call an insurrection. But the facts are stubborn things, even if you choose to ignore them. The truth is the multiple lawless and violent events last summer, including months-long siege of a federal courthouse, burning, looting, physical violence in so-called sanctuary cities, more closely fits the definition of insurrection
the gentleman's time
than anything
has
the president
expired.
said last week.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 30 seconds.
I thank my friend. The American people are asking, is there any depravity too low? Is there any outrage too far? Is there any blood and violence too much to turn hearts and minds in this body? Instead of the usual justification, rationalization, and enabling and false equivalence we have to hear. This is a moment of truth, my friends. Are you on the side of chaos and the mob, or on the side of constitutional democracy and our freedom? It's that simple. That's what this vote for impeachment represents. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, could I inquire how much time each side has?
Yes, you may. The gentleman from Ohio has 25 minutes remaining.
21?
The gentleman has 25 minutes
thank
remaining.
you.
The gentleman from New York has 31 and one quarter remaining. The gentleman from Ohio.
We would reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crow.
The gentleman from Colorado is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, last week I stood in that gallery to defend this chamber against a violent mob called here by Donald Trump. I have dedicated my life to the defense of our nation, and Donald Trump is a risk to all that I love. Some of my Republican colleagues are afraid of the consequences of an impeachment vote, but this Congress sends our young men and women to war every day. I'm not asking you to storm the beaches of Normandy, but only show a fraction of the courage we ask of our troops every day. Leadership is hard. It's time to impeach.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York continues to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio?
We would reserve.
Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York?
Madam Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I heard a few minutes ago that there had been no hearings. Well, I have heard from the people of the 7th District of Illinois. They have told me what to do. They have said, impeach this president. Impeach this president and do it now. I will follow their instructions and vote yes to impeach this president.
The guy told people to go to a permitted
The
rally.
gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Yeah, we continue to reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio continues to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Escobar.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On January 6th, terrorists attacked the United States of America.
Terrorists?
It was an attempted coup and an insurrection, but what I hope Americans understand is that it was a terrorist attack against our country. Those who came and participated must be found and prosecuted.
She's an enemy of freedom.
Those who aided and abetted must be found and prosecuted. And the man who incited it, President Donald J. Trump, our greatest national security threat, must be impeached, held accountable, and never be allowed to hold office again.
She should never be allowed to. She wants American citizens to be terrorists.
The gentleman from Ohio?
Yeah, Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Escher.
The gentlewoman from California is recognized.
The gentlewoman.
For 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, future generations are not going to know the names of each member in the chamber today and voting, but they will know what we did and why. We must impeach the president because he incited a mob that attacked the Capitol of the United States.
No one incited anything.
Of our democracy. He is incapable of honoring his oath and our Constitution, and he has proven to be unfit and dangerous. I will vote to impeach this traitor to our country.
The gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio
Reserve.
Reserves his time. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from New York, Mr. Espaillat.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, today I cast my vote for the second time to impeach Donald J. Trump. He is unfit to hold office. He summons and dispatches mob to kidnap and hurt many of us. He is unfit to hold office. He summons and dispatches mob to assassinate Vice President Pence, to assassinate Speaker Pelosi. He is unfit to hold office. He summons and dispatches a mob that waved the racist Confederate flag and assaulted this Capitol, resulting in the death of 5 Americans, including 2 Capitol police officers. He is unfit
The gentleman's
to
time
hold
has
office.
expired.
We must
The
impeach
gentleman's time
now.
has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves the balance
Assassinate?
of his time. The
He said
gentleman from Ohio
assassinate
is reserved.
Pelosi and
The
Pence.
gentleman from Ohio continues to reserve.
This is
The gentleman
insane.
from New York.
No. Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Garcia.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, I rise today in the strongest possible support for the impeachment of Donald J. Trump. When Trump made a last desperate attempt to steal the presidency, to reject the will of the people by encouraging insurrection, he became the first president to incite an attempted overthrow of the institutions he is sworn to protect. That is a horrifying first, and his actions necessitate another. He should be the first president impeached and removed from office in the history of our country. I voted to impeach him once, and I'm ready to do it again.
I'll bet you
The
are.
gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio.
One more, and then we'll go to you. Reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio continues to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Garcia.
She's terrible.
The gentlewoman from Texas is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, this president took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. Instead, he has chosen to betray and attack our sacred democracy. This president violated his oath. He abused the power of his office, attempted to betray the will of the American people, and incited insurrection against this very House. During the last impeachment trial, I reminded all Americans that democracy is a gift that each generation gives to the next.
She is so
we
full
must
of
do
shit.
all
The
to protect
gentlewoman's
it.
time
For
has
our
expired.
children and our future,
The
we must
gentlewoman's
impeach
time
him.
has
Thank you.
expired.
She said the same exact
The
thing, a
gentleman
gift.
from New York reserves.
She doesn't
The
believe in
gentleman
democracy.
from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stubbe.
Here we go.
The gentleman's yielding 2 minutes. Is that correct?
2 minutes.
2 minutes to the gentleman from Florida.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. For 3 years, Democratic members of this body and the mainstream media lied to the American people that the Trump campaign colluded and conspired with Russia.
True.
For years. After an exhaustive investigation, it was found that there was no evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia.
True.
Should Democratic members of this body resign for lying to the American people repeatedly and sowing division and dissension all across America, and it was all a lie.
True.
You have brought one article of impeachment to the floor, and your one allegation alleges, and I quote, Donald John Trump engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors by inciting violence against the government of the United States. In D.C., it's a crime to, quote, intentionally or recklessly act in such a manner to cause another person to be in reasonable fear and to incite or provoke violence when there's a likelihood that such violence will ensue. There was no language in the president's speech that incited or provoked violence. In fact, at around the 18-minute mark, he stated, and quote, peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
True.
You may think that he's inciting violence because he believes there was election fraud. That's his opinion, and he's entitled to that opinion, just like all of you were entitled to your false and fraudulent opinion that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia.
True.
The legal elements of incitement are based on the Supreme Court case Brandenburg v. Ohio, in which the Supreme Court set the standard for speech that could be prosecuted without violating the First Amendment. Brandenburg's speech called for violence against groups of Americans, and the court found that Brandenburg's comments were not directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action. The court found that it was protected speech, and he was calling for violence. That's the current law of the land. The president didn't even mention violence last Wednesday, much less provoke or incite it.
True.
There was no crime committed, and therefore no basis for impeachment, as you need a high crime or misdemeanor for a basis. You have created a mockery out of the impeachment process, and I urge all my colleagues to stand against it and fight the latest fraud being perpetrated against the American people by the radical left.
Killed it.
Gentleman
Nice job.
back. The gentleman from Ohio wishes
All
to
that's
reserve.
true, and
The
I'm not a
gentleman
right-left
from
guy.
New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from Nevada, Mr. Hursford.
The gentleman from Nevada is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the article of impeachment. Last Wednesday's events were not just a breach of a building, but a breach of our democracy, a threat to our republic and to who we are as Americans. Donald Trump incited insurrection against America and attempted to overturn the will of the people. We must send a clear message that committing sedition disqualifies a president from serving another day in office. I urge this body to vote for impeachment. I will. And I yield back.
The gentleman yields back his time. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio continues to reserve.
Madam
The
Speaker, I
gentleman
now
from New
yield
York.
30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Houlihan.
The gentlewoman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, last evening an 11-year-old girl joined our telephone town hall. Her question shook me to my core. She was worried about the future of this great nation, and I am too. That is why I must move forward with impeachment of this president. He has endangered this nation. He has betrayed his oath. I do this now for all of us, for our Constitution and for this republic. I do this to tell the world that this great democracy will stand and no one is above the law. And I do this for our future generations. I urge us all to unite and to vote yes on impeachment. I yield back.
An
The
11-year-old
gentlewoman
girl
yields
on
back.
a
The gentleman
Zoom
from New York
call.
reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is
That's why
recognized.
I'm doing
Madam
this.
Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman from
Madness.
Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from California, Mr. Huffman.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, history is watching and saving the receipts. Today, my colleagues across the aisle must choose which side of a very bright line they want to be recorded on for all time.
You hear
On
this?
one side,
It's a threat.
lies, sedition, inciting and supporting insurrection, and domestic terrorism.
Domestic
The other
terrorism.
side,
You're a
your
domestic
oath
terrorist.
Of office, the Constitution, democracy, decency.
How
There is
dare
no
you.
middle ground. Today we make history forever. So choose well. A vote to impeach Donald Trump means years from now you can look your grandchildren in the eye
gentleman's time has
and say,
expired.
I did the right
The
thing.
gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman
back.
from New York continues to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
We reserve, Madam
The
Speaker.
gentleman continues to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Jacobs.
Gentlelady,
Gentlewoman
not
from
gentlewoman.
California is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, the response to political violence must always be accountability. Without accountability, more violence will follow. I learned that working at the United Nations and the State Department in conflict settings around the world.
Oh, the UN.
And the United States Congress is now a conflict setting.
Lovely.
A violent mob threatened our lives.
No one
this
threatened your
chamber
life.
And almost succeeded.
Never.
Incited
No.
by the president who broadcast
That's a lie.
his lies about the outcome of our election. We must hold this president accountable. It's the only way to protect our democracy. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from New York continues to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Johnson.
The gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm certain that every member of Congress would say that if they had been in Congress when John Lewis walked across that Edmund Pettus Bridge and the Civil Rights Act was passed, that they would have stood on the right side of history. Well, Madam Speaker,
This needs to be a civil rights
today,
movement. How dare
we're going
he?
to see exactly what side of history you all are going to be on. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York continues to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would yield 1 minute to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Cawthorn.
The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, today represents a unique opportunity in our nation's history. An opportunity to put America first, to put her people first. Today is a moment for members of Congress to put aside partisan politicking and place people over power. I urge my colleagues to vote against this divisive impeachment and realize that dividing America will not save this republic. I urge my colleagues to not simply vote for what feels good. Of course, it feels good for the Democrats to have a united constituency for a few more days. but I was elected to come here and vote for things that actually do good, to bring much needed help to the American people. I am willing to take the first step and extend my hand across the aisle to say, vote against impeachment, vote in favor of a unified nation, and I will forsake partisanship and work with you, no matter who you are or what party you come from. Madam Speaker, I urge that we all vote to finally put America first. And with that, I yield back.
The
Kinda
gentleman
soft.
yields back. The gentleman
Kinda
from
real
Ohio
soft.
wishes to reserve. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to a new member of the House and a new member of the Judiciary Committee. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Jones.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the impeachment of Donald J. Trump, the disgraced, defeated President of the United States. There must be consequences for last week's treason and sedition. Hundreds, if not thousands, of Donald Trumps in today's Republican Party aim to run for higher office, and we must send a message that no one in the United States of America is above the law. The world is watching, Madam Speaker. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York wishes to reserve. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized. Gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the distinguished gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Kildee.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, 1 week ago, the President of the United States incited a deadly attack on the United States Capitol while a couple of dozen members of this House and I covered ourselves in that gallery away from the Trump mob.
And now you got military sleeping on the
including
floor.
Capitol Police. If inciting an insurrection does not warrant impeachment, nothing does. I took an oath to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
You should start
Today,
taking that
I
seriously,
vote
but you
to
never have,
uphold my
Daniel
oath.
The
Kildee.
gentleman from New York wishes to reserve his time.
Gross.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Yield one, excuse me, Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Wisconsin.
The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for 1 minute.
I rise today to strongly object to the articles of impeachment proposed against President Trump, which make the preposterous claim that President Trump wanted or expected the riots that took place last week. He clearly said he wanted peaceful and patriotic demonstration. He did say he wanted people to fight like hell or we're not going to have a country anymore, but that's obviously standard hyperbole and was not meant to aim at physical fights. But what is offensive is what you are saying and inflammatory about the tens of thousands of peaceful protesters who were there last week, as well as the tens of millions of people they represent. You don't understand why they were here. They're scared to death we're going to go back to the days without Donald Trump of hundreds of thousands of people crossing this border every month. They're scared to death nobody's going to keep our manufacturing here. They're scared to death that nobody else will fight the cancel culture as we head towards an era when some things can't be said. They're scared to death that a majority party got here by teaming up with Black Lives Matter, a bunch of founded by Marxists and that dislike the family.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Ohio wishes to reserve.
Reserve.
The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
The gentleman from California is recognized for 30 seconds.
Madam Speaker, I rise today determined to fulfill our sacred oath to protect and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Last week's violent insurrection on the Capitol is a stain on our democracy. A riotous mob, incited by the President, stormed these very halls, beat and murdered police officers, planted pipe bombs, and left our nation shocked and in mourning. The President's rhetoric, actions, and refusal to accept responsibilities are an imminent threat to our nation. I vote to impeach the President. I urge my colleagues to do the
gentleman's
same.
time has expired. The gentleman from New York reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We reserve.
Gentleman from
All right, guys. I'll tell you what. That's about all I can watch. I know it's tough for a lot of you guys to be watching this same thing, but it's going on right now, and they're going to impeach him. You know, again, it's going to be another fiasco. Try to drag him through. And by the way, New York just dumped all of the business ties they had with him. New York City. I mean, listen, this cancel culture is out of control right now. $5, $10, $15, big donors. Couldn't do it without you. Who knows how much longer we're going to be on this platform of YouTube. So make sure that you're on Rockfin. Go make the free account. Follow me on Rockfin. Especially if you're new to the Burmese Brigade and you're looking for another platform that is about free speech and you haven't seen it yet, Rockfin is that platform. Make the free account. Premium accounts, again, help support me. It's awesome. Ray hitting all-time highs of near $5 while this crypto surge continues. So I think people are getting the intrinsic value of content that has free speech. Speaking of free speech, check out my documentary films for free while you can right here. Thumbs the video up, subscribe, and share. But Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture, they're right here in the documentaries playlist section. It's literally youtube.com/InfoWarrior. Everything is also now backed up on Odyssey/library, so that's good news as well. And I just want to say, guys, this isn't a left or right issue with me. This is about right and wrong. And they're trying to make all of us domestic terrorists. Doesn't matter what side you're on. We have to be very, very aware about that and combat it at every level. I love you guys. Thanks for joining me, and I'll